I got the Gundam shirt on, and if you guys remember, if you've been following the channel for a long time, Gundam was supposed to be this powerful joint venture between Honda and General Motors that essentially got scrapped in October of last year. Now, they're still working on fuel cells together, but the real partnership has emerged. This is Honda and Nissan. It is now official. I reported a couple days ago that Honda and Nissan could be working together to make their vehicles less expensive in the era of electrification. Now it's official. So let's get into it. This news is breaking this morning. It's not this morning over in Japan. They're later on in the day, of course. But first thing I woke up to was this. It is 6 a.m. Eastern time, and this is catching the world's attention. Nissan and Honda to start feasibility study of strategic partnership. So just in the very beginning, so stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe because this is an evolving friendship. It's an evolving partnership, and we'll see how it manifests its benefits in the long term. All right, so make sure to subscribe because this is just step one between Honda and Nissan. And if General Motors and Honda was Gundam, I mean, how can you beat that as a name? I don't know what I can do with Nissan and Honda. Nisanda, that's all I got. Let me know how you would combine their names to make it clever or entertaining. So let's get into the details. Here in this image, we have Toshihiro Mibe, the president of Honda, and then we have Makoto Uchida from Nissan on the left. I saw both of them when I was at the Japan Mobility Show. I also saw Toyota's president, Koji Sato, and of course, Toyota's former president and chairman, Akio Toyoda there. And also saw in passing Mazda's president. So the two companies have signed a memorandum of understanding in which they'll begin a feasibility of strategic partnership in the fields of vehicle electrification and intelligence. To further accelerate efforts toward carbon neutrality and zero traffic accident fatalities, it will be essential to strengthen environmental and electrification strategies as well as software development. This is huge. I mean, Mazda just said recently that they're going to be using Toyota's software, the Aisin software, for their EVs. Here we know Subaru's pretty much guaranteed to be able to use it as well. And so you couldn't have one team out of Japan like Mazda, Subaru, Toyota using the same software for their digitally defined vehicles. Honda and Nissan sharing the same software as well. Software is the key for electrification. That's one of the reasons why Tesla is so far ahead and so successful compared to everyone else. The two companies have reached an understanding based on the belief that is necessary, not just beneficial, but it is necessary to combine their strengths and explore the possibility of future collaboration. Why does it seem so necessary and dire? Well, in China, both of their sales are diminishing quick. And China is a huge source of each company's sales, Nissan and Honda. So they need to keep up with the Chinese. And if they don't, they could be completely out of the equation in China. Now, they also need to keep up with Tesla in the United States and potentially the Chinese if they ever break into the market in the United States or North America. Not only that, you have Toyota, which is not, I mean, they're a sleeping giant when it comes to electrification. They're going to be hitting hard soon. You have Stellantis, which is not, I mean, they have EVs coming out. But Nissan and Honda can do it better than Stellantis because it's just two companies, and it feels like I feel like you could make some bigger changes quicker with less complexity in a company compared to Stellantis. But then you have, Ford and General Motors that they also need to compete with on electrification. The scope of the feasibility study includes automotive software platforms, core components related to EVs, and complementary products. Makoto Uchida from Nissan said, "It is important to prepare for the increasing pace of transformation and mobility in the mid to long term, and it is significant that we have reached this agreement based on the mutual understanding that Honda and Nissan face common challenges. We look forward to further discussions and aim to find win-wins for sustainable growth." Honda's president Mibe said, In this period of a once-in-a-century transformation in the automotive industry, we will examine the potential for partnership between Nissan and Honda. Our study criteria will be whether the synergy of technologies and knowledge that our companies have cultivated will enable us to become industry leaders by creating new value for the automotive industry. Hans Greimel over at Automotive News, he is their specialist living in Japan, and he has often the inside scoop and additional knowledge to add to these breaking stories out of Japan. He reminds us that Nissan is the number 3 automaker, Honda's the number 2. You know, a lot of people think Honda or Nissan's above Honda in terms of sales. That's not the case. Honda doesn't really share its sales with any other company. They are independent. The only other company that spun off of Honda that I'm aware of is Acura. Nissan, however, is kind of lumped in with sales with Mitsubishi and Renault. They're still kind of in this loosely held alliance, the Renault Mitsubishi Nissan alliance. If they're to team up, over 7.5 million vehicles could benefit from having lower costs and better software and better product overall. They don't have volume or cost targets yet. It's way too early for that. They know it's really, really important to get things done fast. They mentioned they need to get it done in a short amount of time. Can we survive, said Mibe? That is the question. By 2030, we have to be a top runner in a fight against the top players. Nissan's Uchida says scale and cost are the 2 most important things here with this cooperation. Both companies must think outside the box. We cannot afford to be complacent, Uchida said. Emerging players are making inroads with high competitiveness and totally different business models. Tesla, totally different, direct to consumer, totally different business model. The Chinese are also incomparable to what Nissan, Honda, and traditional automakers are doing. This is a big one for the time being. The companies have no plans to share products or rebadge vehicles. And that was my assumption a couple days ago when the news first broke upon this agreement between these 2 companies. You're not going to see Hondas built at a Nissan plant or vice versa. You're not going to see carbon copies of each other. This is about sharing the bones of the vehicle, the platform technology, the parts, and the software. Capital cross holdings are also out of the scope of discussion for now, though it could be something they're interested in down the road. Previously, Nissan was mainly controlled by Renault, and it wasn't until, I don't know, this past year until Nissan finally got 15% share of equal cross holdings with Renault. So now they can seek out new partners. They can be pretty much independent as they see fit. Here's the good news as well. These cooperations are not confined to Japan. Both of these companies sell cars everywhere around the world for the most part. So it needs to be a global partnership. They may expand in North America, where both Nissan and Honda have mammoth operations, and to Europe, with electric vehicles will be needed to meet regulations, and both companies are still small volume players. Yeah, well, Renault for Nissan is the big European player in that partnership. Honda seemingly has been diminishing in Europe for a while. I don't think they've ever been big there, but they are enormous. Both Honda and Nissan are enormous in China, in Japan, and in North America. Now, also stay tuned. Nissan is preparing to announce a new midterm plan by the end of this month. So we'll have a big update from Nissan in just a couple weeks from now. And I'm glad Hans Greimel is really getting into this part, because this is arguably the most important thing here for Nissan and potentially Honda. The question is finding a partner so our supplier base is efficient enough to sustain our goals in electrification. We need to accelerate electrification, and accelerate means investment that requires achieving scale. For us, what is most important is making the supplier base more efficient. Quick timeout. Nissan was threatening its suppliers here in North America, where they build a ton of vehicles, right? But the Rogue, its best-selling vehicle, they were threatening the suppliers. They're saying, if you can't reduce costs by 20% across the board, we have to move Rogue production back to Japan because it's cheaper for us to produce there and then export it to America from Japan. Nissan does not have the greatest partnership, I guess you could say, not only with its suppliers, nor its dealerships. They have a really bad relationship with the dealers. Honda is on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. Hans Grammel goes on to say that they have totally different corporate cultures, especially in their handling of supplier relations. Honda is known as the more collaborative with suppliers, and Nissan is considered more confrontational. As I just mentioned, they will threaten its suppliers to reduce costs. But that is, I mean, it's not just Nissan, but Stellantis does the same thing. And they don't have a good relationship with their suppliers, Stellantis, nor their dealerships, something that Nissan is struggling with too. Nissan is accustomed to working in tight partnerships, cough for no, and Honda is more protective of its autonomy. And they both know, here that's a good thing, they both know, Mibe and Uchida, of their cultural differences at the business level, but they said it could be managed. They said it's a different company, so it's a different culture, but the assumption is that we can overcome these barriers, even though there are different cultures, there are also commonalities. That's right. You got to look at the positive instead of the negative. Let's also not forget Honda's joint venture with Sony. That could also benefit Nissan in the long term as well. This is not the first time we've heard about Nissan and Honda teaming together. In 2018, after Carlos Ghosn was sacked, they were saying, hey, Nissan, this is the best time for you to seek a Japanese partner and get out of this Renault alliance. But that never happened. So I talk about Aisin and Denso, which is the major suppliers for Toyota. Honda, conversely, works with Hitachi Astemo, and this is the major supplier. But the problem is Hitachi Astemo a supplier here in North America, or is that mainly a supplier in Japan? This parts maker is relatively new, formed in 2021 by combining Hitachi Automotive and a group of Honda suppliers. Honda has 40% stake in that company. Hitachi has the other 40%. And Hitachi Automotive has had a long history of supplying Nissan. And this new company, Astemo, delivers e-axles and EV components to Honda and Nissan. Not only are they considering China as a threat in the future with low-cost EVs, but they're also saying India could come out of the woodwork and show their manufacturing prowess as well as low-cost manufacturing too. It looks like in Japan, the K-car market, the mini car market, they could really benefit from helping each other out by sharing a lot of parts, driving down cost. I mean, the situation seems dire for both companies. This is how this article ends. The normal level of cost reduction achieved by Japanese car makers is not enough anymore, even though their earnings are still good. They didn't have a lot of concrete ideas of what to do together. At least they're not sharing those concrete ideas of what to do together. Honestly, they could have something in the background. They're just not ready to share it. That's like Japanese manufacturers 101. You don't show your cards until that is like almost the vehicle's almost ready for production, it seems like. However, they just have a feeling that they can't survive by themselves. So it's almost like the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and they see Tesla, Chinese autos, potentially Indian autos. They're all going to be competition to their neighbors, which is Nissan and Honda. They're neighboring companies outside from inside of Japan, and they need to work with each other in order to survive the EV low-cost race to the bottom. I was actually this morning going to make a different video. I had some articles ready for you guys. I mean, I have the blue Nexus e-axles here that we see in the Lexus RZ and BZ4X from Toyota, as well as the Subaru Solterra. And it looks like Subaru, Toyota, and partner Aisin are going to be working on drivetrains together. And this is a new image we've never seen of an e-axle, which combines the inverter, the motor, all in one package. And this, to me, looks small enough to where you can have 4 of these for a next generation of symmetrical all-wheel drive for Subaru vehicles. This thing looks absolutely tiny compared to these monsters that we see currently in the BZ4X and the Subaru Solterra. And these new e-axles come to the market in the late 2020s. These little motors will not only be produced at the Aisin factories, but also at Sakamoto Industry, which is a supplier of Subaru. In 2028, Subaru wants to sell 400,000 EVs in the US alone, which is roughly half of their total volume. And then by 2030, an additional 600,000 100,000 BEVs from Subaru. And by the end of 2026, Subaru plans to roll out 4 electric crossovers, including the existing Solterra, so 3 more, and it will add 4 more EVs by the end of 2028. Subaru's lineup is going to be so different in just a few years. Can we speculate on what any of these are going to be? Well, one is totally going to be the Subaru version of the BZ5X. We just don't know what Subaru is going to call it, and that will be made at the Kentucky plant. Lexus will have a variant as well called the TZ. So that's 2 of the 4 coming by the end of 2026. I don't know what the other 2 could be. Honestly, if you're going to keep the Solterra around, I mean, you have a 3-row and a 2-row. Are you going to have a really small one? Are you going to have kind of like a wagon looking one like the Outback? I just don't understand how they could have 4 electric crossovers by the end of 2026. Is that really going to help their sales? I don't know. It depends. If their design is out of this world, then it could help them. But Subaru's design hasn't been good for a long time, in my opinion. 2 more years later, they're going to have 4 more EVs. So essentially, they're going to have an EV variant of every model in their lineup. It's the only way for me to make sense of it. Things are changing fast in the automotive industry, and big partnerships is just the beginning here with Nissan and Honda. We're seeing Subaru work closer with Toyota suppliers because Subaru, at some point in time, a lot of people theorize that they could just be absorbed by Toyota. You could say in some ways they already are. But once they start using the Toyota's own software and they start using the same e-axles, I mean, look, we already have a Subaru that's rebadged from a Toyota, and it's made from a Toyota plant that is a Solterra. And we already have GR86 and the BRZ little sports cars. So I could see Subaru and Toyota definitely working together for more and more projects in the future. In the meantime, Honda and Nissan are definitely behind the 8 ball compared to the competition, but it's better late than never. And it's not too late because they're still healthy-ish companies, but they're seeing their market share erode incredibly fast in China, and they can't wait any longer to just see what happens. They need to make sure they have competitive product and affordable products and parts to make sure that they survive into the electrified era. I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching.